What's up, people? Welcome back to another video. I hope you all are doing good. This is Gufran, and you're watching Indian Grad in Germany. I make podcasts with entrepreneurs from Munich and around Germany. We discuss about their products and services, what the startups are offering. It's also beneficial and informational for the students out there who are studying because there are lots of startups growing around Munich and in Germany. The startup ecosystem has been growing a lot. And here in today's episode, I have with me Jonas, who is also working on his startup. So let's hear from him. Hi, Jonas. Thanks for joining the podcast episode today.
Hi, Gufran. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So to start with the discussion, we'll start with your introduction. So if you can briefly introduce the audience about yourself, about your startup, and then we can discuss more about that.
Okay. So yeah, I'm Jonas or Jonas, and I'm one of the three co-founders of RYVER.AI. I myself have a business background. I studied finance and computer science at the Technical University of Munich, and started RYVER.AI together with my two technical co-founders, Kathy and Simona,
Mm-hmm.
officially last year in September 2022, but we've been working on it, on the idea and exploring different ideas for a while longer. And I'd say that's everything about me. And a few first words about RYVER.AI. What we're doing is we are tackling the data bottleneck in medical imaging AI. So what's the problem right now is a lot of companies build products to help clinical practices or clinics, doctors make better decisions with artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these products actually happen in radiology, because in radiology, the task of the AI is pretty straightforward. Find the abnormality in this image, find the tumor in this lung CT.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem that all these companies that build software products to help radiologists have is that on the one hand, they need to gather tons of data to cover the whole patient diversity out there, because patients are just extremely diverse
Mm-hmm.
biologically,
Yep.
geographically, and other factors. And on the other hand, it's extremely difficult to collect medical data because we're talking about medical data. So it's
Yep.
sensitive from a privacy perspective. IT in hospitals is just horrible most of the times. And there are various other factors that just make collecting medical data extremely difficult. And these both aspects don't go together quite well. You need lots
Mm-hmm.
of data, but it's difficult to collect it. So the consequence of this is that there are a lot of biases in diagnostic AI models. They're not accurate and robust enough. And we aim to tackle this by providing methods to generate artificial testing and training data sets based on very recent methods of generative AI. So we create artificial images of kind of like fake patients, which
Mm-hmm.
makes the data private, and license it to the companies that build diagnostic software to support radiologists.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds too complex for me, but in simple words, if I say, so your team is working on the data and you enhance the data set so that it can perfectly suit for the industry standards and they can, I mean, improve their diagnostic practices ahead when they are working with actual patients.
Yes and no. So we're not improving data, we're
Mm-hmm.
generating completely new data points. So
Okay.
you can imagine our software like an art forger, for instance. Imagine an art forger who you show hundreds of Picasso images
Uh-huh.
of different styles of Picasso, because in different phases of his life, he painted
Yep.
in a different way. The art forger understands how these images look like, what are the characteristics of specific phases of Picasso, and now you tell the art forger, hey, please paint 10 Picasso images of his
Mm-hmm.
late phase in the late stage of his life, because I want to sell them on the black market.
Yeah.
Um, um, and then the art forger paints them, and no one can distinguish them from the real ones, but
Mm-hmm.
they are very, very good in a very well way representing how Picasso painted back in the days. And we're doing a very similarly, but
Mm-hmm.
we're not working with Picassos, but with the art of medical imaging. So our AI looks at medical images, X-rays, CTs, understands the different characteristics, also understands different characteristics of specific conditions, demographic conditions, pathologic conditions. And now we can tell it, please generate 100 lung CTs of a European man between 50 and 65 with an early stage tumor in the left lung.
Oh.
You generate this data, and this data is now used as training data by companies that actually build diagnostic software, which is then sold to the practitioner. That's kind of like the value chain.
Okay, got it. Now this is a bit more clear, because for a layman to understand what your product is, which is quite complex, which I felt when I asked you, but now I got a gist of it, what it looks like. Is this still in the validation phase, or this is validated and will be out in the market?
I think startups have for a very, very long time in a validation phase. So I still say we're in a validation phase. So we found that the problem is real. We found that there's willingness to pay for the problem. Also found that we can improve diagnostic models with synthetic data. We've done experiments and all that. We're currently preparing our first MVP for the market, but still you're continuously trying to validate and make sure that you're actually working on the right business model, you're actually solving the right problem, you're actually solving it for the right price. A lot of stuff to be validated, and I feel the validation journey
will be on.
It probably never really ends. If you end validating your ideas and the ways you tackle things, you'll probably be dead as a company pretty quickly.
I mean, you stop the innovation process. Moving forward with the discussion, as you said, your team is of 3 people and you are the one from the business side. So how you came up with this team, whether you met in the university or you met in some startup incubator programs in the university? And moving forward, we'll also discuss, like, were you also a part of some startup incubator programs from TUM, or you started on your own?
I did the Manage and More scholarship of Unternehmertum together with Kathy and Simona. It's like a scholarship program of 18 months. 80, I think 20 people per batch, focused on entrepreneurship. We did this together, and we started, I think we've known each other for 4 weeks maybe, when the first COVID lockdown started in April 2020.
Okay.
And back then, Kathy had the idea that there will be this problem of a lot of small local stores having to shut down and not having revenues, but still having to pay some fixed cost like rent or employees. And the question was, how can we support small cafes, bistros, boutiques in Munich to bridge this gap and to bridge this time? And we thought about actually customers buying gift cards from them, providing cash flow upfront, to give them the money they need to bridge this time where they can't make actual revenue. And we thought, hey, that's a cool idea. Let's start this and let's see if we can build anything out of it afterwards, that creates value in the long run, not only for the first weeks of a COVID lockdown. And that's how we got together. And Kathy got in Simona, who is a friend of another scholarship that Kathy and Simona is a techie by heart. He's also a techie by heart. So both techies. And we started building it with, I think, 14, 15 other people from university, people we knew, people we got to know, who volunteered to build this with us. And it was a very fun and intensive time. After it went quite well, we made very revenue pretty quickly, but at a certain point we realized, hey, that's nothing we want to do for the next 10 years. Tech stack totally commoditized, so there's no interesting tech to build here. And Kathy and Simona are just very passionate about building great tech, and the commercial side is a lot about marketing, and I'm not that much of a consumer market geek. And that's when we decided, hey, let's hand this over to another company who's doing a very similar thing in Berlin back then. Handed it over, and then started working on new ideas and tested a lot of new ideas. We had one thesis, which we've based all our ideas on. We tested them. We killed a lot of these ideas pretty quickly. And then after some time came up with what we're doing today. And that's the idea that survived for 12 to 18 months now.
That's a great background story I've heard about. So you were working on something else, and now you're actually working on something else. But what it requires to build a team, like how do you identify those particular characteristics while building a team? What were the key aspects or characteristics that you looked into when you were forming a team between you three people?
I mean, you have to give the credits mostly to Kathy because she brought in Simona and she kind of like brought in me, and she had that's how the team came together. So maybe we should also ask her what she actually looked at, what she saw in us. But for me, it was always about, particularly in the beginning, it was about realizing I always knew what would be my biggest weakness as an entrepreneur, or I thought I knew. And I still think, because I'm someone who tends to be a bit over analytical about a few things that might be good in some jobs, but it's not as a founder, because as a founder, you need to execute quickly. You need to get rid of your fear of failing, execute, fail, learn, start again, execute, fail, learn, start again. And there's a small analysis part in this chain all the time, but it shouldn't be too big. And I always thought, or what I saw, particularly in Kathy, who I got to know first, was someone who thinks differently and works differently, and who's just like this tremendous executor, and getting shit done right away, acting on ideas quickly, realizing maybe it doesn't, let's do something different. And I always thought, if I have someone that complements my biggest weakness that I feel I have, that's a match.
I mean, indirectly, you just told about the founder characteristics. What is needed to be a startup founder, like what you have to go through. You just termed it into few steps right now. So I believe we already covered that point. Moving forward with the product, because I also want to know about this startup. So what markets and what customers are you targeting? So this is more of a service, right? It won't be a product as such.
It will be a product. It will be a product. So what we're doing, we're actually licensing the AI models that generate the data. So it's kind of like a model as a service approach. You can imagine it like the GPT large language model, but for medical images. Where you have an API, you can access the model for a licensing fee or for a subscription fee, fine-tune it on your own data, and then generate data. So there will be a productized version. Now, who are we targeting with this? We're targeting everyone that's training AI on medical images and has a need for medical images. First off, radiology. And there are a few companies and customer groups that have this, either dedicated clinical AI companies, large medtech players like Siemens, Philips, GE, and the AI teams there, of course, research institutions, and also pharma companies in the future to help clinical trials identify the right patients with AI, etc. And these are the customer groups we're targeting and we're looking at.
And with the companies that you said right now, so I believe then geographical boundaries are no longer a constraint, right? So your market is quite big then. It's not specifically related to Europe or something.
Yes. I mean, the problem is that the market is so niche that we cannot restrict it geographically. I'd rather put it that way, because the customer, we're looking at a very niche customer group and a market that's just starting to grow and just starting to come to existence. I mean, the ability to certify and clear AI for medical use cases and clinical use cases has just been there in place for 8 years now. So the market is still in its early phase of development. And that's why we're not focusing on any geographic region. And also we don't feel there's a need to focus on a geographic region.
Got it. Again, I mean, whenever you start a startup, you have an idea, but it all requires funding to move ahead, to grow. So this question is related to funding. Initially, you started by your own, or you got some grant from German government to start
Yeah.
your startup, or is it like you were investing your own amount and then running the startup?
So we started everything during our studies, where we
Mm-hmm.
worked on finance through our working student jobs and our parents. Then, with a pretty good timing, actually, fortunately,
Mm-hmm.
we got this grant from the German government, as you said. It's called
Mm-hmm.
Exist Scholarship, which it's a grant that, on the one hand, pays up to 4 founders a monthly salary
Okay.
of 2,500 euros.
Mm-hmm.
Taxes have to be paid afterwards. No problem if you're not cautious. And then, on the other hand, you get like a certain budget that you
Mm-hmm.
can spend on other things. For instance, we bought a GPU with the money and
Mm-hmm.
paid for some travels to conferences and stuff like that. And that's how we started. That gave us about a year of time, and during this
Mm-hmm.
year, we were fortunate enough and got lucky enough to raise our first external funding
Mm-hmm.
from an actual investor, from a small VC from Spain, and that's how we moved forward.
I mean, it's tough, right? When you actually go into the market for funding, it's tough actually as a founder to be in that process. What are your thoughts on this? Like, you have to be consistent, you have to be there, you have to be strong. What are the challenges in this phase?
For fundraising, you mean
Yeah,
particularly?
yeah.
Challenges for fundraising. You have to be okay to get a lot of no's.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be, and that's actually it. You just have to be okay to take a lot of no's, and don't question
Mm-hmm.
your own ability and your business based on the no's you get. Of course, you have to reflect
Mm-hmm.
on what might be the reasons that people don't want to invest. Is it really due to the business? Is it due to how you communicate the business
Mm-hmm.
idea and the business model and the pitch? What might be the reasons? What can you do better? Like, you have to constantly reiterate your pitch and think about how you do it, but not get to the point where you question everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you tend to get in this, I myself experienced it, getting into this stage of paralysis where you're like, what the hell am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. 50 investors said no. Like, how can this make sense? What do I not see? What do I not
Mm-hmm.
understand? And you have to put yourself out of this, because in the end, you have to take a lot of no's, and from 100 investors, only a few will invest.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the game, and that's part of the game, and that's the
Yeah.
process. And you need to push through this and keep your funnel open. If you realize opportunities in your funnel become less and less and less, just open up the funnel again. It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
With almost like everything in founding,
Mm-hmm.
building a company, a lot of these things are just numbers games. Sales, hiring, fundraising, and that's it.
So the people who are watching this podcast, this is quite important. What he said right now, there will be ups, there will be downs, but as a founder, you have to be strong. You have to be persistent in your efforts, in your abilities. And all that matters is one yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
We have 5 minutes, so I wanted to ask like two questions in this. Maybe you can wrap that in those 5 minutes. The first one is what qualities are required to be in this entrepreneurial mindset, to be in entrepreneurship if someone wants to start their own startups. Many students watch my podcast, so for them, this is one important point. And then lastly, you can tell the future outlook for your startup, or when this will be in the market, where people can approach you, where is the platform, is there some website or something, and then we wrap this up.
Okay. The first question was, what are the skills I think it
Yeah.
needs to
What should be the mindset, what qualities they should have? maybe you can give us 3 top qualities or a
I
mindset.
think it's difficult. I think it's difficult to say 3 top qualities because I guess you're always pretty biased, and I don't feel that you need to be special in any kind of way. Just really have to want it.
Yeah.
And this means going through ups and downs, pushing through setbacks, and just being persistent. And really, you need to want to do this really,
Yeah.
really quickly. And I feel what helped me a lot was this mindset shift of not being all about the goal, but being all about the process. It sounds super cheesy and like something you hear a lot.
Yeah.
But this process made me realize what it means actually. What keeps me going at the moment and what drives me is oftentimes more the joy of going through this process and the willingness of learning and developing through this process than the goal of having built a company. And these are 2 completely different things, and it makes you make decisions in a different way, look at setbacks in a different way. And I feel this is not the mindset you need, but one that helped me a lot.
What's the outlook for future? How are you growing in future, or at present, where all the people can approach you? Which platform is available? And also, are there opportunities coming up for students? That's interesting as well.
Yeah. So what's the future outlook? I mean, we're actually in the process right now of expanding the team. We're expanding our tech team, but we try to stay very small and nimble as long as possible. I think that's extremely important. And don't scale before you actually find something close to product market fit, because then it's too early. And I'll be honest, we're not there yet. It will take us some more time. But until then, we grow, and we will grow for a few people. At the moment, we're actually hiring founders, associates, and AI engineers. And you can always reach out to me via LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect via LinkedIn. Just my name will probably be somewhere.
No, I'll add that up in the description.
And I think that's the best way.
Yeah. And do you also have some website where you have plans for future, or you have like all theory written about your startup there, like with all data?
You can look at RYVER.AI. That's the name of the company, and that's the website.
Yeah, I'll link that up in the description then.
Perfect.
Thanks. Super. So I'll conclude then. Thanks, Jonas, for having you here in this podcast session. Thanks for the genuine feedback and comments that you gave about your startup. And also, it was quite motivating for me. I believe it would be the same for the students who are watching this video, as of what your journey was as a team and how are you growing in future. So we are looking forward to your startup in future. Let's get connected, and thanks, Jonas, again.
Thanks for having me, Gufran.